Hello again. Welcome back to Farming Simulator 25. I'm doing another weeding test. This time I am going to do wheat because it takes longer to grow. More growth phases. I just want to see if the results have any difference from the sorghum. So here we are, lower right. Our control. I currently have weeds turned off, so this will be our control. I moved everything to a bigger field too. I wanted to do a slightly bigger field at least than that small one down by the store. And to get the stuff here, I use this. Pretty cool mod. Basically, you end up with your own store. Let me see if I can see what it's called. If it's in this list here. It is not in this list here. I forget what it's called, but it's fairly new. Last couple days. So yeah, got all basically the same equipment up here that I had used for the previous tests. So you can see all that there. The cultivator, the planter, and another tractor over there. I used the large, that huge Amazon seed drill to do this. This field was already 100% fertilized when I purchased it. There was nothing in it. So I just threw in the wheat. And so you can see 90% yield bonus, 100% fertilized. Let's open up this just so you can see that information. I don't know if anybody cares. Yeah, so I'm gonna move us to harvest time for this, which I'm not quite sure when that's gonna be because I'm doing this with no seasons. So I'll be back when it's fully grown to harvest it. All right, we are harvest ready. This is earlier than I thought it would be. So the normal planting, like with seasons, is September, October, harvest in July, August for wheat. Because I have seasons off, I did this in August, which is, the start month on the map. So it's a month earlier than you'd normally do it. So I figured it'd be ready in June, but it's March. So I don't know if the winter months, December, January, February, like if those would normally cause like the lag in growth. Because it's been, was it June? I mean, sorry, August to March is what? 7 months. And it would normally be 10 months. So it's 3 months that it cut out of the growth, which I was not expecting. So, yeah, we're going to use the S7 here to harvest this. What the header do we have on here? The 45. Okay. It's not the biggest one, but it's a little more manageable than the 50. So I think what I'm going to do is I will get on with the harvest here. And I am not going to worry about straw. We don't care about that. Though it would be interesting maybe to see, but the weeds affect the amount of straw too, but I don't know. I don't know if I should do that. That's a test for another day maybe. I would imagine if you affect your regular yield, it would affect your straw yield as well, but anyways, I will go through this and we'll see what our baseline yield is. So I'll be back with you after the harvest. Finish up the baseline harvest here. We filled the Farm Tech trailer. Yeah, that's what that one is, right? Farm Tech. It's 28,000 in that, and then 1949 in this. It's pretty easy math, but you know, not do math anymore. So 1949, 29,949 is our baseline. So that is with weeds turned off. So I guess we will reset, and I think go through to the worst case with just weeds, full-on weeds at harvest, and see where that leaves us. All right, loaded back in. As you can see, it says weeds growing, and we'll open up the field options. Yeah, so we will move forward. Oh, and I, instead of going back and forth to one of the houses, I put this sleep trigger doormat thing here so that I can just do that right from here. So I guess we'll be back in March to see how it looks. And we are back in here. It is now March. Again, this is seasons off. So we are ready to harvest. As you can see, we have large weeds. And our yield bonus is at 70%. I want to say this was at 90. Pretty sure it was 90%. I really should write these things down. Yeah, so we've lost, you know, that percentage of the yield bonus on the field info. I did go through and I went into the field info, the field options. So I want to see what this was showing for the growth states, because I do want to do a comparison to seasons on, seasonal growth on. But for this wheat, what it did was, planted in August was, you know, invisible. So there's nothing showing because it was just sown. September. So this is just going month by month. So September was green small. October was green small 2. November green middle. December green middle 2. January was green big. February green big 2. And then March is harvest ready. And I should have looked at the yield bonus as I went through as well, and I forgot to. But it went, I noticed it being at 70% in December at green middle 2. So August, when it was planted, the weeds showed as growing. September they were small, October medium, and November large. So probably by November, it was down to 70% yield bonus. But anyways, let's see what that looks like with an actual harvest. So I will do the same thing. I'm going to follow the same path I did. That's the same thing I did on the previous video with the sorghum. I did the harvest the same way every time to try and minimize any variables. So I will be back with you when we are done with this harvest. Right, back in. Obviously, based on the previous test, we know there is going to be a difference, and it's a pretty decent difference here. I unloaded this last time. I unloaded, you know, the first unload of the harvester was when the harvester was full. I got to a point where I was like, yeah, it's close enough, I'll unload it. And then I finished this. We're not even going to need this second trailer like we did on the baseline harvest. So let's see what this totals out to here. Come on, a little bit faster. All right, 26,940. So the baseline was 29,949 with no weed treatment whatsoever. We are at 26,940, which is basically 3,000 liters difference. So you lost 3,000 liters of yield on that. So that's not great. Not great. Yeah, so I will load back in, and we will do we'll do a pre-treat. So as soon as we yeah, when we come back in, we'll do our weeding on the freshly planted ground. All right, we are back in, and as you can see, we have our periodic little popping up of weeds growing in the lower right there. You know, our baseline, 100% fertilized, 90% yield bonus. I'm going to use the hoe, and I think I demonstrated in the first video that the hoe and both those weeders there, that super large one and the small one, in this case, on the freshly planted field, work the same. The only difference is when you get into small versus medium weeds. So I will hoe this, and yeah, I'll show you the results where we're not going to see that you know, weeds growing, popping up anymore, and then we'll move on into harvest. All right, we are done with the hoeing. Just parked up. This actually even had just the size of the field had this obnoxious, like, slight overlap where the last up and down was like a meter offset from the headland there. So I even went over that, even though it was only like a tiny strip along the edge I had to get. But you could see, obviously it needs rolling, but we're not worried about that. But it's not popping up anymore where it says weeds growing. So we will push through and harvest and see where we're at. We should be probably within either spot on with or within a few liters of our baseline. All right, here we are in March again, ready to harvest. There it is. There's no weeds. 90% yield bonus. So time to get the numbers on this one and see how it looks. All right, back in. We've finished the harvest, and again we have, just like the baseline, that trailer is full with 28,000 liters. And we got another 1948. So it's 1 liter difference. So that puts us at 29,948. You know, 1 liter. Who knows what that could be? Just random variance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat this process, but with spraying instead of using a weeder or hoe. You know, same thing right after seed drilling or planting, essentially, is what it's going to be. So same thing, just with the chemical instead of a physical weeder or hoe. Alright, here we are. We finished up the spraying, you know, on the freshly planted or seeded field here. Again, 28,000 in the other trailer. And we have 1,937, so that's 29. 29,937. Baseline was 29,949. Now I'll show you on the map. The first time the combine filled up, I drove into the crop just a little bit. That spot right there. So that accounts for the 12 liter difference. So no significant difference there for spraying. As far as yield, the difference is, shut that off. You're using a consumable that costs you money. So we used 622 liters of herbicide, spraying this field. Now I did it full width of this sprayer. It was 3 passes. The last pass, I probably could have narrowed it down on the working width. But the problem with the herbicide is when you spray it in the field, you can't see where you've sprayed it. Now, if you're doing it on weeds that are already showing, you can see where they've been killed off. It's the same actually with the hoe or the weeders. On the freshly planted or drilled field, you can't see, other than your tire tracks, where you've been. There's no texture change, there's no weeds to disappear, so it's very difficult. So I just did it full width. So sure, you could use a little bit less than that, but you have your cost of whatever your sprayer happens to be and your herbicide. So that's that there. So again, just like in the first test, on the smaller sorghum field, taking care of it early. Now we're going to get into the kind of the meat of why I chose to do this again with a crop that takes longer to grow. There's more growth phases. I should have looked at the names, and maybe I'll go back and do it and notate it somewhere in the video. As far as what the growth phases are of something like sorghum, where it's only like 4 months to grow, where this is in no seasons, it's 7 months. With seasonal growth on, it's 10 months. So that's another thing I want to look at too, is what happens to make it longer. I suspect that in maybe, December, January, February, or something like that, whatever the winter months are in the calendar, I should just look at it, right? Yeah, December, January, February. I suspect in these months, it's stopped in one of the growth phases, maybe like green small 2 or green middle. So, and then it picks back up in the spring. But yeah, so what we're going to move on to next is we will do weeding and spraying in the first growth phase. Again, I suspect that's going to be the same as the previous test. So, but we'll get to it. So I'm back in a second. All right. Yeah, since this is kind of a new section of the testing here, we'll start out with, before we actually get to the weeding and whatnot. So yeah, small weeds. This is the 1 month. And it's down to 80% yield bonus. So let's take a look at this. Green small. Weeds are small alive, so first thing I'm going to do is we will use I'll use the big weeder this time. Again, I don't think it makes any difference necessarily in this case. I do like the hoe, but I've used the hoe a bunch, so I'm very familiar with that working well. So, well, apparently this can put grass down. Why do I have it with that on, or does it always come with it? I don't know. So, I will get on with weeding this, and maybe we'll take a look at it when I'm done before we get to the, let me move this out of the way, before we get to the harvest, because you can actually see what's going on with weeds being gone, and you can see it on the map. That's, like I've said, that's the downfall of doing it immediately after planting, is there's no visual reference. So let me get lined up here, and usually what I end up doing with these is I just go back and forth. I don't mess with the headland or anything. So I will get on with this, and we'll be back before we harvest. Well, I got annoyed with that weeder, so I switched to the hoe. So half the field, the north half up that way, is with the weeder. The southern half-ish is with the hoe. But either way, yield bonus is back up to 90%. No weeds showing across the whole width of the field. And the map is clear. So, the one thing I do find odd, the hoe doesn't do this, but the weeders do with the grass. So I don't know what that's about. Anyways, we'll get over here and we'll move on to harvest. Alright, so after the harvest, and this is from using the weeder and the hoe during the first growth phase of the wheat, we have 29,937 liters, which oddly is the same as when I did the crop destruction. It's a little weird, but who knows? I don't think I did any other crop destruction this time. Doesn't look like it. Oh, maybe a little in the corner. Could be. Could be. Messed it up a little bit somehow, maybe. I don't know. Either way, it's still within reason. It's only like, what, 12 liters or something. So the next is going to be, I'm actually going to skip the spraying for the first growth phase, because in the last test it was the same for the sorghum in the first growth phase. It was the same as weeding and hoeing. There was no difference. And it was the same for weeding or hoeing and spraying in this test for right after planting. So I don't expect there to be a difference in the first growth phase, so we'll just move on to the next growth phase for testing. Alright, so I was originally not going to come in. I was just going to do a bunch of the stuff and come up with results. But this was interesting. I wanted to test this weeder. So this is the second growth phase. We're in October, which for this is green small 2, and 75%. It's down to 75% yield bonus. Medium weeds. So these can only do small weeds, and it's supposed to be in like the first growth phase, but small is small, I guess, right? You know, green small 1 and 2. This is 2. But behind it, it says partial. Now I've seen that say partial before on, just looking at other fields occasionally, or maybe a contract field or something. And then on the map, oddly, it goes from the light, or like a medium-ish of the green, to the darker green. So I think what's happening is maybe there's some small weeds with the medium, and it's able to take the small out but not the medium. But now, because it is getting some of it, it's back up to 80%. So this is kind of getting into a level that I wasn't planning on. So I don't think I'm gonna get into doing this part of it, because this is a whole extra level of how much yield is there going to be with partial. Maybe that'll be a third video, testing some of the weeding stuff. The other thing I did look at, and I've been going through, is the sorghum. I went and checked that field because I still have it. It's still set up for the testing. It starts invisible just like this does, but then it goes to green small in the first growth phase, which makes sense. But then the second growth phase is green middle instead of green small 2. So I think the sorghum just takes out the 2 part. So like the wheat had green small 2, green middle 2, green big 2. The sorghum probably takes out the 2. But I'll look at that in completion when I've gone through more of the months here. So it is interesting. So using the weeder on medium weeds may partially help, because you're going from what are we in October? You're going from a 75% yield bonus. That's weird. Why is that part 90? Maybe that part has no weeds in it at all. Yeah, so you're going from 75 to 80%. So no, what am I don't even know what I'm trying to do here. Alright, so let's get this weeder off. I'm going to try the hoe, because the hoe does medium weeds. So let's switch over to that. I mean, you can see it took some of the weeds out. Because we are on the technically the second growth phase, this may not work. Let's see. I'm gonna go in a separate line here. Let me move all the way over to this one. I may have to reset. If this doesn't work, we're probably going to go with spraying. So if this doesn't do anything, that's what we'll do. But let's see what happens with the hoe. That looks like it's working. Okay, so yeah, that is working. Let's go back over to this side. I just want to see if it fixes the other part. Is it not updating? Okay, yeah, it is fixing it. Okay, so we are in the second month of the wheat, and the hoe is working, and the weeders are partially working on medium weeds. So I'm going to finish this up with the hoe, and I will do the harvest. And we'll see where we're at with our yield. It's possible it's not long enough that it's affected it with the sorghum when you got past the first growth phase. Alright, yeah, sorry for the jump there, got interrupted. Yeah, so with the sorghum, because the second growth phase is the middle, the weeders did nothing. And I think this did nothing as well. So it's definitely interesting that because there's two small phases for wheat, it allows it in the second one. Because this will do, I think it's just because this does medium. I would imagine if for some reason you only had small weeds in this green small 2 growth phase, maybe the weeder would work. I don't know if this is something that the plowing affects, because a freshly plowed field won't grow weeds when you plant it or seed it. So maybe on the second planting or something it has fewer weeds or smaller weeds. I don't know. I haven't really messed with the periodic plowing even on this game yet, so I'm not really sure. Anyways, I think we're good here. Yeah, map looks good. So I will get on to the harvest and see if there was any detrimental effect on the yield. Alright, so that's that one finished. Yeah, so this was the second growth phase, I guess. It's green small 2 is what it's called. With medium weeds, we hoed it, and 29,946. So we're kind of back to the normal baseline amount. So that worked fine. I suspect when we get to the third, fourth growth phases, green middle and green middle 2, it's probably going to have a lasting effect to still have weeds that long into it, but we'll find out. So let me get into those, and I'll come back with some results. Here we are, and this is the first time we're seeing a loss in yield other than the no weed treatment in any way. So this was weed treatment done in when did we do this? November? Yeah, November. So that's the growth phase called green middle. And before treatment, we had large weeds. The weeder and the hoe did nothing, so we had to spray. The yield bonus was down to 70%. After spraying, it went up to 75%. So you only gained 5% yield bonus. And after doing some of the math on some of these, so the no treatment dropped the yield bonus from 90 to 70%. So 20% hit to the yield bonus, and the numbers was a 10% hit to the yield itself. So I guess the way you have to look at it is your regular yield with the 0% bonus is, we'll just call that 100%, right? That's you've done nothing, it's a 0% bonus. But then if you do 100% bonus, so that's 200%. So when you lose 20% of that bonus, that's 20% of 200 is 10% of your entire yield. So in this case, it was, after we sprayed it, went up to 75% bonus. So that's a 15% drop. The harvest numbers here, the 27,687 liters. The drop in yield from the baseline is 7.5%, half of 15. So it looks like it makes sense, right? Because your yield bonus is just what it says. It's a bonus. I mean, I guess you could look at it as the other way, where doing nothing, 0%, is a 50% yield, and 100% yield bonus is 100% yield. Either way, you're talking about half. So a 15% drop in your bonus is 7.5% drop in your overall yield. So now I suspect, because the next phase to test is green middle 2, and that also is large weeds, and it's down to 70%. I don't think there's going to be any difference. So what I'll probably do is I'm going to go start that process, and I will spray part of it and see what it changes the bonus to. If it changes the bonus from 70 to 75, I'm just going to skip it, because it's going to turn out the same as this. And then I'll move on to Green Big and Green Big 2 and see what those are doing. But right now, I'm kind of suspecting that just once you hit large weeds, you're boned. But I want to see if there's a bigger drop in the percentage when we get to Green Big. Is the thing there. But anyways, let me get on with that, and I'll be back with you when I have something to report. All right, to kind of wrap it up here, yeah, if your field looks like that with weeds, you're boned. That's basically what it is. Once you hit large weeds, you're losing yield. And if you spray them, you're just getting a little bit of that back. So let me go over a little bit of what happened. So let me bring up this spreadsheet here that I kind of hacked together. So the wheat, again, this is seasonal growth is off, so it's not actually taking as long to mature. I'm going to have to do a separate thing where I look at these growth states for seasons on. So for this particular field, the way it was set up, it was 100% fertilized. The yield bonus was at 90%. So that was our baseline. After drilling, if it was treated for weeds, whether that's with a weeder, a hoe, or sprayed, after treatment, you're back to 90%. There was no yield loss. Going into the first growth of green small, before treatment, you're down to 80% yield bonus. Small weeds are growing. After weeding, hoeing, or spraying, you're back at 90%. And you are back to no yield loss. Then you move into green small 2, the second month, you're down to 75% yield bonus with medium weeds. So this is a little weird. I gotta probably do another thing looking at this partial weeds. But this is already taken long enough today. So after hoeing or spraying in this state, it was back to 90%. So it was, that's October, no loss, but the weeders left it at this partial. It said weeds partial, and that was showing an 80% yield bonus. So I'm gonna have to take a look and see where that ends up. I don't know if I'll do another video or if I'll just try it and post it as a comment to this video. So then moving on into November, you're into the middle growth phases. You're down to 70% before treatment. At this point, you have large weeds. All you can do is spray them, and it gets you up to 75%. And at that point, November, you have a 7.5% overall yield loss. The same thing happened in December, green middle 2. I didn't do the harvest. I am assuming the amount is the same with a 7.5% yield loss. And I think that's pretty safe because moving into January into green big, same thing, 70% before treatment, 75% after spraying. I did harvest that, and as you can see, the value, 7.5% yield loss, approximate. And then February, green big 2, 70%, 75 after spraying. I assumed the harvest is going to be the same. And then once you get into March, harvest ready, you can't do anything about it. You're boned, you're 70%, and that was earlier in the thing, so it's 10% yield loss there. Now again, this is just for wheat. I don't know if barley might be a little different. Maybe the numbers will be a little different. And then sorghum, which is the first test I did, so you can go look at the first video for all of that. But just to kind of review it a little bit again, I don't have all the info. Some of it might be in there. I don't remember. I didn't really look closely at the details in the information window. But that one, the baseline, it was 100% fertilized, 95% yield bonus in that field. So the same stuff basically, but you can see these are the growth states that you have for that because it's a shorter growth for sorghum. Our baseline amount, and then with no treatment, it seemed to be just a 7% loss. Which I don't know. It was still 20% yield bonus loss. So you'd think that should be a 10%. But I guess it could be different for different crops. I'm not sure. But basically, I mean, the same thing. I don't know if this is an anomaly. But again, this could be a difference. I did this as a separate test. I didn't do this while I was doing the video. The spraying in November at the green big phase. So I don't know, maybe I should try soybeans or something, because that's, I think, 5 months to grow. So I could see what that is. Anyways, basically the results of this testing is don't wait until you have large weeds, because that is where you run into problems. In the case of the sorghum, we already had a loss at medium weeds though. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it might be crop dependent a little bit because of the shorter growth of some of them. But yeah, I would recommend if you can do it, even though it's harder because you can't see the results. Do it right after you've planted or drilled. That's what I would recommend if you can do it that way. Otherwise, you got to do it in the first month. If you wait, you're kind of boned. And I'd recommend the hoe. I still recommend the hoe. I think it's the best way to do it. It's fast. It doesn't have the same working width as the largest weeders there are out there, but it's got a very fast working speed. So maybe if you feel the need to do a huge working width, maybe it would be more efficient with a very large sprayer on huge fields, but you can still spray um, right after planting or drilling, and you'll kill your weeds off for the growth phase, the entire growth of the crop. So that is my recommendation. Um, Hopefully this helps people. And I guess any questions or comments, throw them in. I'll possibly do more follow-up with some other crops just to see if maybe the vegetables or root crops might be different. So I don't know. I think that concludes this testing. It's taken me quite a while to do this, so I'm a little tired and worn out. So I hope that helped some people out, and I'll see you in the next video.